Tonight, thanks for being with us. A Dallas police icon has died. Former Detective Jim Leavelle, who was escorting Lee Harvey Oswald when he was shot and killed following the JFK assassination, has died. He was the first detective to interrogate Oswald after the assassination and was one of the last surviving major figures in that case. We spoke to him, in fact, just a couple of years ago when JFK records were declassified and released to the public. Leavelle died, we understand, while visiting family in Colorado. He had just celebrated a birthday on Friday, in fact, when he turned 99.
It is one of the 20th century's most iconic images, the moment JFK assassin Lee Harvey Oswald was shot to death in a downtown Dallas garage. Breaking tonight, the heroic Stetson-wearing cop who handcuffed himself to Oswald has passed away.
We're fortunate to have Jason Whiteley here with us. You spent some time with former Detective Jim Leavelle.
Yeah, well, I did an interview with him a couple of years ago, and Leavelle was really a cop's cop. And for years, he would graciously and genuinely tell his story of his most famous brush with history. Of course, Leavelle was immortalized in this Pulitzer Prize-winning photograph by Bob Jackson. 2 days after President Kennedy was assassinated in Dealey Plaza, Leavelle came in on his day off and volunteered to transfer Lee Harvey Oswald from the downtown Dallas police station over to the county jail. And Leavelle vividly remembered one moment just before Oswald was gunned down in front of him.
I had to get him ready. Like I said, he was my prisoner. So I had to get him ready for the transfer, and he wanted to put on that black slip-over sweater that he had on. I let him put that on, and when he's putting that on, I told him, I said, Lee, if anybody shoots at you, I hope they're as good a shot as you are, meaning they'd hit him and not me. And he laughed, and he said, oh, nobody's gonna shoot at me.
Interview with Leavelle 2 years ago at his home in Garland. He was 97 years old then, still wore Stetsons. In fact, he had a closet full of them here. One interesting thing, though, I remember that Leavelle told me is that President Ford once asked Leavelle for his autograph, a real genuine guy. To what do you owe your longevity?
Well, I tell you, it wasn't that led to it. I was lucky for one thing, I had the man upstairs looking after me. I got shot at 3 different times where the bullet was come within an inch or 2 of my head.
What do you want your legacy to be?
My legacy?
Yes, sir.
I just want to live a long time and then die. Before I die, get well again. So that's it.
And he did live a long time. Believe it or not, the Oswald murder wasn't Leavelle's only brush with history. He was a young sailor in 1941 on the USS Whitney, stationed in Pearl Harbor when the Japanese attacked that naval base. Jim Leavelle just turned 99 last week. He was in Colorado visiting family when he died. I just spoke to his granddaughter a few moments ago. They said they had a great time celebrating his birthday together. They put 99 candles, she said, on a birthday cake. They all blew them out. He had a good time. He fell, though, on Monday. He broke his hip, and he died early this morning from complications from that and after having a massive heart attack. Of course, no arrangements yet have been made and have been shared yet, but they will share a statement, they said, tomorrow morning.
He was so sharp in that interview you did with him just a couple of years ago.
Crystal clear memory, and we've talked to a lot of people who witness heroic events. What was fascinating about him is he would genuinely just tell you all about this.
I'm so happy to see you. You look great. You're a young man at 94.
Well, thank you. I hope I look pretty good, but I'll take your word for it.
You look great, Jim. And you and I have known each other a long time, over 20 years. And the first time I ever met you, I was just amazed at how you were so giving of yourself to people, to talk about what happened, to share history. And here you are 20 years later, and you're still doing it. It's amazing. I can't believe you're so dedicated to history.
Well, it started off with school kids asking me to talk to them, and it just increased to everyone that come along, really. And I took it as a responsibility for what I was involved in. I thought I should let them know my part in history and try to set straight some of the misconceptions that people had of the assassination. So that's the reason that I have been talking to all these years, but I about run out. So
well, you said that 10 years ago, and you're still chugging along. So you're not running out yet. And I want to ask you, what's the one misconception that you like to debunk?
Well, I'll debunk all of them just about, but of course the one that where there was a conspiracy involved, that's the one that I hit on the most, and I have pretty well debunked it all, except the people that's not going to have it any other way. So you could have the president come back and tell him who shot him if he wanted to, and they still wouldn't believe it. But that's the primary thing that I'd like to get over.
And then you have dialogue with the major characters. I mean, you talked to Lee Harvey Oswald, you talked to Jack Ruby. Tell us what happened after Jack Ruby shot Lee Harvey Oswald, the conversation that he said where he messed things up. Or you tell him.
Yeah. Well, that happened the next day. Of course, after he shot Oswald, I went to the hospital with Oswald and waited till he was pronounced dead there. And fact of the business, one of the things that I did out there that I've been complimented on many times was, and when I took him into the operating room and put him on the operating table, the doctors were standing by. I told him, I said, before you do anything else, I want that bullet out of him, because it had come through and lodged just under the skin. I could take my fingers and roll the bullet around under the skin. So I told him, I said, I want that bullet out of him before you do anything else. So they just rolled it over and hit it with the scaffold. It just popped out in a tray. And then I had the nurse standing there to put her initial on the butt end of that bullet. And because I told her, I said, you and I are going to be testifying down the road that this is the bullet to come out of him. And sure enough, we did. I testified several times. I know she did at least once. But I've been complimented many times for that. But I was always taught to gather evidence, and that's what it was for, because I could prove that that was the bullet that killed him.
And you ended up serving 25 years on the Dallas Police Department, and you retired in the early 70s. And I'm working on a column about you right now, about how you are a living history and how you dedicate yourself to helping others. And that's why I admire you so much, and that's why I'm so happy to host you here at the Dallas Morning News today. And thank you for coming and sharing your life experience with all of us.
You're quite welcome.
So you wear the cowboy hat every day?
Well, if I go out, I do. I wear it, because I wore a hat when I went out all my life. And so.
There was a time when the spotlight began to wear on Officer Jim Leavelle. He abandoned that iconic cowboy hat.
It got to the point that I couldn't leave when I come to work in the morning. I'd get stopped twice before I get to the city hall. So then I left the hat off.
Leavelle shot to international fame November 24, 1963, as he escorted Lee Harvey Oswald, the very moment Oswald was shot by Jack Ruby. Leavelle remembers that moment like it was yesterday.
He wanted to do something that would make him a hero or make him very popular, and that's what he wanted to do. And I told him, I said, Lee, if anybody shoots at you, I hope they're as good a shot as you are, meaning they'd hit him and not me. And he kind of laughed. He said, oh, nobody's going to shoot at me. It couldn't very well leave my mind, because I'm reminded of it nearly every day, so through somebody.
And here at the Dallas Police Department, 50 years later, people line up for pictures and autographs. Leavelle says he gets over 300 requests from all over the world every year.
I know a lot of people want to make a hero or something out of me, but all I was doing was a police officer doing my job. That's all happening in those days. Untold number of really brave things that was done by the sailors. Well, I was aboard ship, and it happened just a few minutes before 8 o'clock. I was a loader on that 4-inch gun that shot 30 miles. We loaded it and had it ready, but it was useless to fire at planes a half a mile up with a gun like that. If I fired it back in the direction where the planes were from our ship, it would have landed somewhere in Honolulu. I'd say we was a good 2 miles away. If you're mile or two away, it looks like it's just a little ways over there. So we had a real good view of everything that was going on, but there was nothing we could do about it. We got orders to stay put. All the commanders were given orders to get their ships out of the harbor. You see, that channel was so shallow that if they sunk a ship in it, then no other could go in and out. And of course the Japanese knew that too. The commander of the battleship Nevada, he cranked up and got out, but he was burning fore and aft. He had a fire going on both ends. The Japanese saw that, had that battleship going in that, and they took after him because they wanted to sink him in that channel. He used his head. He's a smart deal. He turned that battleship and run it aground. As a result of that, they saved it and later on put it back into commission. There's a lot of heroic things took place that day. The sailors and all of that, they didn't have to be told what to do. They could see what needed to be done, and they did it. You did what you had to do is what it amounted to. Oswald, who had shot the president, he was stopped on the street because he's walking along at a pretty fast clip. Officer J.D. Tippit stopped him and to question him. Oswald had no intention of shooting that officer. If he'd just been using his head a little bit and gave Tippit his identification and everything, Tippit would have looked at it and passed him on. So he was brought in as a suspect in the killing of Tippit. He wasn't brought in for the president deal, but he was assigned to me as my prisoner. Therefore, everything that took place went through me. When I got in, he was sitting in an interrogation room by himself. And so I walked in and sat down and started talking to him, and I had him some 10 or 15 minutes, maybe 20 at the most. And when we was transferring him, it was still since he was my prisoner, it was up to me to head up the moving. Yeah, as we walked into the basement down there on the transfer, I saw Ruby. He was facing me about 5 or 6 feet away. I always make it a habit when I go into a room where I'm doing an investigation, I always look up and down the people that I see. And I saw Jack Ruby. He was standing right there in front, and he had the pistol in his left hand, holding it against his left leg. As I walked in, and he made 2 quick steps, which brought him into arm's length to me, and I reached over past Oswald, caught him by the left shoulder and was pushing back. But he had switched the pistol over to his right hand and shot. If it hadn't been for that rib catching that bullet, if it had missed it, it'd come on and hit me in the side over here.
This is Detective Jim Leavelle, who was this morning handcuffed to Oswald and was bringing him out to the car to be transferred to the county jail. Could you tell us what happened?
We were proceeding with the prisoner as scheduled from the jail office out to the ramp where the automobile was waiting. And as we reached the area where the car was parked, the man from the crowd emerged, and there was 100 or more newspapermen and cameramen in the area, and it was almost a solid wall of flesh in front of us and to our left, composed of the news media. When we came through the door with Oswald, they began taking their pictures, and in the issuing time that they were snapping pictures and talking, I saw this man come from the crowd, and at the time he emerged from this crowd of people, he was not more than 6 or 7 feet from me. And I dare say that had I known that he was going to be there, the swiftness with which it happened, I doubt if anyone could have prevented it.
Did you see the gun in his hand as he came?
I saw the gun in his hand as he emerged from the crowd. But being such a short distance from me, I had no time to say anything. I did jerk Oswald to try to jerk him behind me.
Now, you were handcuffed to him?
I was handcuffed to him and also had a hold of the waistband of his trousers. I tried to jerk him behind me, but he had and I reached up and caught a hold of Jack Ruby's shoulder, left shoulder, and shoved back on him. At the same time pulling on Oswald. But he had this .38 snub-nosed pistol, and all he had to do was pull the trigger. It was a double-action gun, and therefore the whole episode only took a matter of a second to take place.
Now, when Oswald fell to the ground, was he unconscious at that point?
I would say if he was not, he was nearly so. Just as soon as my partner on the other side, Mr. Graves, grabbed Jack's hand with the gun in such a manner that he couldn't fire it anymore.
Did he try to fire it again?
Yes, he was still, with his left hand, he had the gun in his right hand, he was trying to pull it around, and I could tell that he was still trying to snap the pistol. But Mr. Graves had it in such a manner that he couldn't fire it anymore.
Did you speak to the victim on the ground?
Yes, I immediately picked him up then with another officer, I don't remember who that was, and carried him back inside the jail office to get him away from the area. And I tried to talk to him and ask him if he could hear me and if he understood me. He never did answer me, and his eyes were partially closed. As far as I know, he never regained consciousness.
How has this affected the morale, the spirit of the police force?
Well, I think that I can probably speak for all the officers here, that I've heard many of them comment on it, and I think that they all feel very deeply about it. They regret the incident happening. We regret the shooting that occurred to the president on Friday, and certainly this hasn't helped their feelings any at all. Mr. Ruby didn't better our cause any by shooting Oswald.
Did you recognize him when he came through?
Yes, I have known Jack Ruby for a number of years, and I recognized him just as soon as he emerged from the crowd.
But even if you knew he was coming, you say you didn't have the time to react to prevent it.
He was so close from the human wall of flesh of reporters there that it would have been impossible to have stopped him.
Thank you very much, Detective. The story of what happened when Lee Harvey Oswald was killed this morning. This is Bill Lord reporting from the Dallas Police Station.